Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to talk about Pathfinder 2 and what Paizo could have done to have saved this book and tried to go down the same direction. All right, so Pathfinder 2, the second edition, the core rulebook, I think its size, its 640-page size, is an absolutely catastrophic mistake on the part of Paizo. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to sell this book. The book does, you can't even run a game out of this 640-page book. That's shocking. It has no beast, and it doesn't tell you how to be a game master. That's incredible to me, right? Like 640 pages, you should be able to get your whole game in there, right? Like, that's nuts, in my opinion, all right? So you have that standing there, right? So what could Pathfinder have done that would have been a lot better way to approach this, right? So what I would have done to make this game much more accessible and make it a modern, exciting approach to tabletop role-playing games is, rather than make essentially what they did was they made a player's handbook that's twice the size of the player's handbook, right? Which, like, what is the wisdom in that? I don't think there's any wisdom in that, right? So, so what could they have done? Well, there was a really cool opportunity. There was an option that could have been done, which I think was shown through the FFG Star Wars game. So the way I would have done this, the game has 12 core classes, right? So the way I would have approached this is I would have split their world, right, Galarian or whatever their world is, right, into 3 distinct realms, right, and made them, contiguous continents, right, and then built a structure where each 4 of the classes, you had a core rule book with all the rules you need to run the game with just the 4 core classes, right? So there would have been a rule book with fighter, cleric, rogue, and wizard, right? And then there would have been another separate core rule book, right? And it would have given a little bit of information about another continent, and on this continent, these other 4 classes were dominant, right? Like, basically all the other classes were just like visiting, you know what I mean? But in this, because of the shape of the realm, these other ones, and then you could do barbarian, you could do druid, you could do sorcerer, you could do alchemist, right? So that's your second core rule book, right? And then you would have one more, right? And in there, you could have sorcerer and the other 3, the other 3 classes, all that had a functionally stronger positioning on the contiguous continent they were on, right? Now, there'd be incredible benefits to this. One, at this point, each book can be 200-300 pages long, right? Maybe 180 pages, right? So then you could have 180 pages for 3 different books. They're light and they're interchangeable, and somebody can try one out, and it's not like this huge commitment, right? Whereas buying Pathfinder 2nd edition is an absolutely massive commitment, right? Because you got to do more than just get that book. You cannot run the game out of that book. You are all in on this. You have to buy the bestiary, you have to buy that book, and you have to buy the Game Master book just to know how to Game Master the game, right? It's pretty incredible, right? And then I think there's also a player's book, right? And I think there's also a settings book. It's nuts. Like, you really have to go deep to get into this, right? It's just crazy. But if you had done this, if you had made these 3 books, right, then different dungeon masters could buy different books, right? The other thing is you could ramp into it, right? So you could buy you could choose whichever one you wanted to buy, choose your first core rule book with 4 of the classes, right? Play that for 6 months, play that for a year, then buy your second book, right? And now you have those extra classes, and then buy that 3rd book, right? And then the other thing is you could really craft really different types of stories where if you take one of the books, if you don't own one of the books, it actually is a plus, right? Like, because then at that point you're dealing with these classes that are, that you have different campaigns could have different shapes, right? based on what was purchased, right? And it would just be a much more accessible, much more affordable, much more flexible option that would just give players way more ways to play the game, be much more inviting and winsome in going into the game, right? So I think this would have been, split the three core rulebooks split the core rulebook into three fully functioning, fully freestanding core rulebooks, all that could be purchased separately, right? And you could still run the game with any one of them, right? And I think that would have been a really exciting way to go. And by the way, you could have put beasts into each one, right? That was specific to that continent, and then anybody who wanted the entire bestiary could just get those three books, right? You could even knock these out to 256 pages. The standard length on a core D&D book, right, had three of these. Then your core rule book is really 750 pages with everything you need, right? With your bestiary, with your with all your classes, but it could have been bought in a modular way, right? And it would have been innovative because that's been done for Star Wars, and it was done for Star Wars specifically for from a commercial perspective, but it just happened to work out great, and I think a lot of people really liked it, right? And it was really good, and it hasn't really been done at all in a fantasy game, right? And so it could have been innovative and cool, but the Pathfinder 2nd edition core rulebook as it stands does not in any way strike me as cool. It strikes me as really, really old. Just old and just tarnished, in my opinion, with memories. Like, it just almost like a cry for a long dead day of role-playing games where, people just sat in their basement for 10, 12 hours because they didn't have any other options. It just seems like a Morningfield wail for the old days. And boy, I think it was a really, really bad idea to make a 640-page book that you can't run a game out of. It's just shocking that Pathfinder 2nd edition core rulebook was built on this premise, and that Paizo made this specific decision. All right? That's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.